1. Oma tells me that the eyes are the best part. I watch as she leans over the dinner table, her dark hair tucked neatly behind her ears, her manicured fingers working quickly and deftly at the fish on the plate in front of her. She has done this so many times that by now she could do it with her eyes closed. First, she splits the fish in half using her metal chopsticks to break the body open at the top, where the head meets the dorsal fins, revealing a neat row of tiny, almost invisible bones. The flesh is still steaming hot, but my mother doesn't seem to feel anything at all. She tugs at the spine, which comes away whole, and she sets it aside before returning her attention to the soft, white flesh. When she's done, the fish is completely picked apart, its bones placed in a neat pile on the paper napkin next to her plate. Oma looks up at Ji-yoon and me, a smile spreading across her face. We know what she's going to say, but still we squirm with discomfort. "Who wants the eye?" she asks, gesturing toward the plate. The fish gapes at us, staring blankly. Ji-yoon, my sister, is 15 and the pickiest eater I know. She can't even eat tomatoes without gagging. Their slimy texture makes her sick. Every time our mother brings up fish eyes, Ji-yoon turns pale, a sheen of sweat forming on her forehead. "No way," my sister shakes her head, pushing herself from the table. "I'd rather die." Oma is unfazed by Ji-yoon's response. "Ji-won?" she asks. "What about you? Don't you want the eye?" I shudder. "No, I really don't want it." "More for me," Uma says cheerfully. She takes one metal chopstick between her fingers and stabs it into the fish's head. Next to me, Ji-yoon makes a noise that's somewhere between a gasp and a heave. I don't even have to look at her to know that her mouth is hanging wide open. Mine is frozen in the same way, our expressions mirrored. After a few seconds, Oma takes both of her chopsticks and holds them high in the air so that Ji-yoon and I can see the small white ball positioned in between the two slender pieces of metal. She's triumphant, her own eyes sparkling, and before either of us can stop her, she pops the entire thing in her mouth. "So delicious!" she exclaims, opening her mouth and showing us her tongue. The silvery fillings in her teeth glint in the light. "See? Oma isn't lying. You guys are really missing out." The meal is tainted now. Ji-yoon and I pick around the fish, trying to avoid it, focusing our attention on the steamed rice and side dishes instead. I know the fish was dead long before my mother plucked the eyeball out of its head, but somehow this seems too extreme. Before Uma started doing this, I never felt bad about eating fish. Whenever we had it for dinner, I ate voraciously, sucking every remaining morsel of flesh off the bones. Now I can't even look at a fish without feeling cruel. It was once a living, breathing creature. It could see and feel and think. It probably had a family, maybe even friends. Oblivious to our dour moods, Uma chatters away, shoveling bits of rice and fish into her mouth. She doesn't stop talking, even when her mouth is full, and occasionally half-chewed pieces of rice fall onto the table. To make matters worse, she picks up the fish skin, which is fried to a crispy brown and dripping with oil, and puts it in her mouth. It crackles between her teeth. "It's because you two are still young," she says, laughing. "When I was a child, I hated things like fish skin and fish eyes, probably because my parents used to force me to eat them. We were poor and they didn't want anything to go to waste. They would tell us that it was lucky to eat the eye, and even then I refused. I didn't start liking these things until I was older, until after I came to California and met your father." She stops abruptly. Without her babbling, there's an awkward and unbearable silence that hangs over us. Ji-yoon and I glance at each other through the corners of our eyes. It's the first time Oma has mentioned our father since he suddenly left 2 weeks ago. Oma sweeps her bangs away from her forehead, the corners of her lips twitching upward. Her smile is forced. She stands up, her chair scraping loudly against the linoleum floor. "That was a great meal, wasn't it?" she says. "I'm so full I might explode." I nod, keeping my expression neutral. "Delicious." She puts her dishes in the sink and turns on the faucet. Ji-yoon and I listen to the squeak of the kitchen sponge in our mother's hand and the splash of water hitting the basin. Then, without another word, Oma disappears into her bedroom, her footsteps soft. Our apartment is small. The kitchen and the living area are right next to each other, and once you turn the corner, there's a short hallway and the bathroom we all share. Past that, there are 2 bedrooms. The entire space is only 700 square feet, and you can hear everything. Every whisper, every step, every creak, every flush. I wait until Amma's bedroom door is shut before standing up and picking up the plate where the fish is lying, half eaten, a hole where its eye should be. It's still warm. "You don't want any more of this, right?" I ask Ji-yoon. She tilts her head, gazing at me through narrowed eyes. "Absolutely not." I walk over to the trash can and scrape the rest of the fish off the plate, the tines of the fork screeching against the ceramic. It lands on the top of the coffee grounds and curls of onion skin, where it stares up at me accusingly, as though I'm the one who has wronged it. If Ji-yoon wasn't here, I would have said, "It wasn't me. I didn't do it." Only when the lid closes do I feel some semblance of relief. 2. If I'm being honest, I had no idea people ate fish eyes until 2 weeks ago. When it happened the first time, I was certain that my father's departure had caused my mother to lose her mind. It was a few days after Appa left. Oma had been inconsolable. She sobbed through the night, and even though she was trying to hide it from Ji-yoon and me, it was obvious. In the morning, her eyes were red and puffy, the tip of her nose rubbed raw. Besides, We had heard all of it, her quiet whimpers and pained moans, which floated through the thin wall into our bedroom, where June and I lay in the bed we shared. Wide awake, we looked at each other. It was Jiyun who said something first, in a voice so low that I could barely hear. She whispered, "Should we say something?" "No," I murmured. "I don't want to embarrass her." To be honest, I was afraid. Jiyun wanted me to take the reins, to play the role of older sister. Maybe I should have, but the thought of walking in there and seeing my mother slumped over her pillow made me feel sick to my stomach. I wanted to sleep, to ignore everything that was happening. Every time I closed my eyes, the sounds of my mother's weeping grew louder, filling the entire space until there was no longer any room to breathe. Ji-yoon nudged me with her elbow. "What?" I asked. "Appa is going to come back, isn't he?" Ji-yoon whispered. "He wouldn't leave us like this." I stared down at the covers. "I know he would never do such a terrible thing," Ji-yoon continued. "Don't you think so?" I knew the truth then, that our father was not going to return. But even in the dark I could see my sister's expression, the wrinkles across her forehead. It hurt me so badly that I found myself lying through my teeth. "Of course he'll come back." She turned onto her shoulder, facing me, and chewed her lower lip. "How can you be so sure?" "I just am." Reassured, Ji-yoon curled up next to me like a cooked shrimp, her feet hanging off the bed. I stroked her silky dark hair until she fell asleep, watching as as her chest rose and fell. She looked so peaceful and at ease that I almost didn't feel guilty. Long after my mother grew quiet, I remained awake, listening to Ji-yoon snore beside me. Only then did the awfulness of our situation swim back into my heart. The following evening my mother prepared a feast. It came as a surprise to us, given how lethargic and miserable she had been that morning. She came home early from work, stepping over Ji-yoon and the piles of homework on the floor, and spent the entire afternoon cooking feverishly. Sweat dripped from her forehead. She swiped at it before calling out to us, her voice high. "Dinner is ready." The apartment was hazy from smoke. I'd heard my mother moving back and forth from the kitchen to the living area, but still I was surprised to find that our small rectangular dining table, every inch of it, was covered with food. In the middle there was a big stone pot filled with braised beef short ribs, my father's favorite. Next to it was an entire fish, deep fried, the napkin underneath it spotted with oil. I saw soy marinated, soft tofu and steamed egg speckled with bits of green onion, which jiggled when the table was touched. There was also a colorful array of side dishes, all homemade: wilted spinach, deep green in color, completely drenched in sesame oil; seasoned soybean sprouts with their little yellow heads peeking out, and garlicky fiddleheads cooked to an earthy brown. Oma had even made fresh kimchi, The crisp white cabbage, flecked with bright red gochugaru flakes. There was hardly any space to rest my elbows, and I imagined the table sagging under the weight of our dinner. It was a lot of food for just the three of us, but when I saw the extra table setting at the place where my father normally sat, I understood. Ji-yoon and I settled into our regular spots, surrounded by plates and bowls, and began to eat. My mother, on the other hand, perched on the edge of her chair, a spoon dangling loosely from her fingers. Her attention was focused on the front door as though Appa was about to burst through at any moment. Ji-yoon raised her eyebrows at me and nodded her head toward Amma's tense body. I cleared my throat. You spent so much time making this meal. You should at least have a bite. Reluctant, Oma tore off a piece of meat and placed it on top of her rice. As she started digging into the steaming mound of food, we heard a quiet jingling from the hallway outside. It was the sound of keys. Oma jumped up and dashed to the door. I held my breath and watched as she stood, her hand hovering over the doorknob. We were waiting for it to turn. Instead, a squeaky voice called out, "Wrong door, sorry." It was the neighbor, a distracted and forgetful old man who tried to open our door at least once a week. Oma sank onto the floor, her hands covering her face. A choked sob escaped her lips. Ji-yoon and I hurried over to her. When I touched my mother's shoulder gently, she jerked away. She turned her head toward me, and I saw that the mascara she had carefully applied was now running down her cheeks. Ji-yoon and I helped Amma up and led her back to the table, where she sat, wilted like a thirsty flower, her hair wild. She looked up first at Ji-yoon and then at me, and began to laugh. The sound was harsh and frightening. "Do you think I'm unlucky?" Oma asked. "No," Ji-yoon replied softly. She was afraid, her hands clasping the edge of the table. Her knuckles were white. "Why?" Oma shrugged and pointed at the pile of fish on the table. "Fish eyes are good luck. If I eat one, maybe it will bring your father back." Before I could say anything, Oma ripped the eyeball out of the fish's head. There were gelatinous bits still attached to it, flakes of skin and flesh. Without hesitating, she popped the entire thing in her mouth and began to chew. Ji-yoon and I squealed at the same time. "Spit it out!" To our horror, Oma swallowed, her throat moving in a big gulp. Oblivious to our revulsion, she flipped the fish over. "Look, here's the other eye. Who wants to try it?" The tofu wobbled precariously as Ji-yoon and I pushed ourselves back from the table. Ji-yoon's chair tipped backward and fell to the floor with a crash. For the first time that evening, Oma laughed with sincerity. "I won't make you girls eat it," she said, smiling through her tears. "If anything, I'm glad you don't want to try. Your mother needs all the luck she can get. 3. The truth is that Appa left because he met another woman. I know this because I heard him say so myself. It was the beginning of July. Independence Day had passed, but people were still setting off fireworks all over the city. I woke up, startled by a sudden bang, and opened my eyes just in time to see a shower of sparks from the window, the smoke curling lazily in the air. Groaning, I untangled myself from the blankets and moved Ji-yoon's arm, which was resting across my chest. The room was stifling hot, made worse by the proximity of my sister's body to me. Somehow the sound hadn't woken her up. Outside, I heard raised voices. I assumed that the neighbors were arguing. Again, I rubbed my face and turned to listen. Right away, I realized that the voices weren't coming from the outside. They were coming from my parents' bedroom next door. It was past midnight, though the fact that they were still awake wasn't unusual, since my father often went to bed late. What was unusual was the tone of my mother's voice. I couldn't make out exactly what she was saying, but I knew something was terribly wrong. Oma was passive, easy-going woman. She never dared to argue with my father, who in our home was both a king and a god. His word was law. The rest of us, his pawns, did what we were told to do. Wide awake, I squashed my ear against the wall. I could hear every word clearly. The sharpness and acidity of my father's tone, and the waterlogged quality of my mother's, as though someone was holding her head under water. She was crying. "But why?" Amma asked. "I don't understand why you would want to leave. Don't you care about me? Don't you care about the girls?" "Of course I care about them," Appa snapped. "Don't bring Ji-won and Ji-yoon into this. It has nothing to do with them." "Then what's your reason? Is it really because of me? Yobo, please, give me a chance to fix this. You're right, I haven't been a good wife to you lately. I understand this now. I can do better. I will do better." Hearing them, the knot in my chest tightened. I needed to move away from the wall to stop listening, but at the same time I was overwhelmed by the need to know. How was Appa going to respond? What was he going to say? I waited, holding my breath. My father's voice was so low that I had to strain to hear him speak. "I can't stay," he said. "I met someone else." After a moment's pause, there was a terrible sound. It started slowly but began to build in volume and scope until it engulfed the apartment. I clapped my hands over my ears, unable to fully comprehend what was happening. My mother was howling. The pain in her cry was so intense that it made all the hair on my neck stand on end. And I turned to Ji-yoon, certain that she would be awake, but Ji-yoon's eyes remained closed. I crawled under the covers next to her, my skin hot and prickly. I didn't want to hear anymore. I didn't want to know anymore. All I wanted was to sleep, to forget, But the rest of the night my mother's sobbing continued. I wondered how my father was able to stand it, lying next to her like that. Even when I tried to muffle her sounds, hugging my pillow over my head, it was as though she was in the room with me. 4. 2 months have passed since that night, and still Oma waits. She hovers by the entrance of our apartment at all hours of the day, more ghost than human. She haunts the shoe rack and the closet right next to the doorway, the one that's filled with old coats and broken umbrellas and Christmas decorations that we haven't used in years. She pretends that they need to be reorganized daily, but I know better. She's listening for my father's footsteps, for his heavy tread. She's hoping that he will change his mind and come back. When I see her like this, the words tiptoe to the edge of my tongue. I want to tell her, "Don't bother," or "There's no point." But I know it doesn't matter. She won't listen to me anyway. Uma is someone who is used to waiting. In fact, she has probably spent more of her life waiting than not. During the 1970s, when my mother was growing up, Korea was poverty-stricken. Most people in the country didn't have enough to eat, but it was especially terrible in the little village in Seoul, where their family of 7 lived, where they and everyone they knew were bordering on starvation. Uma and each of her siblings had only 2 sets of raggedy clothes and ate one meal a day, a diluted porridge that was more water than rice. My mother's parents faced a dilemma. The family needed warmer clothing for the approaching winter, which they had heard was going to be particularly terrible. They also needed rice and flour and salt and medicine too, but the children kept getting sick from malnutrition. But jobs were scarce, and nobody could find any work. When the next door neighbor's daughter died in her sleep, she was nothing more than a whittled skeleton. Hearing the news, my grandmother and grandfather were deeply shaken. After seeing the corpse at the funeral, the clothes hanging from her bones, they came to the realization that they had to look elsewhere to try and make some money. There was no other choice. In the middle of the night, my grandparents woke Ha-jun, the eldest boy of the family. My uncle was disoriented when they pressed the money into his palm and whispered a flurry of instructions into his ears. Before he could comprehend what was happening, they had already slipped through the door and disappeared into the chilly fall air. No one else had seen them go. The money was gone in less than a month, spent on frivolous things like candy and magazines. Whatever meager amount of rice they had been left with was depleted, and the children were starving. Was it really a surprise that they had no idea how to take care of themselves? Ha-jun was only 14. The winter, which was just as brutal as experts had predicted, pelted Seoul and its surrounding areas with a frigid layer of ice and snow. Their little tin house had no isolation, and the children became sick, their heads and bodies hot with fever, the sleeves of their clothes hard and crusted with yellowed snot. Ha-jun had a deep cough that made his lungs rattle. A second layer of snow fell, even harder and wetter than before, and Hajun decided he and his siblings would follow in their parents' footsteps and travel in search of work. He was secretly convinced that they had been abandoned and that nobody would ever come back for them. The other siblings agreed. The only exception was my mother, who refused to go. Ha-Jun fought her until the end, dragging her out of the house by her hair, but she kicked and screamed until he released her. On the day that they left, Ha-Jun could not stop crying. He understood what leaving her behind meant, even if she was too young and too foolish to understand. He turned and called out to her every time he took a step away from the house. "Are you sure? It's not too late to come?" "I'm sure." Another step. "Are you sure? 100% sure?" "Yes, I'm sure." 3 months passed. To survive, my mother ate snow and bark, and the occasional rabbit or rat, which she was only able to catch through sheer desperation. Mostly she stayed inside, shivering from the cold. In the spring she found wild onions, garlic, mugwort, and minari that she cooked into a thin, flavorless soup. In the summer she picked humming cicadas from the trees and mushrooms from the woods. By some miracle she survived, though not without consequence. When her parents finally returned in the late fall, she was frail, as small as a child half her age, more bones than flesh. My grandparents were surprised to find Oma by herself, and feared the worst. She could barely talk, and seemed to have little idea of what was going on around her. Eventually they were able to find Ha-Jun and the rest of the siblings scattered around the southern part of the country. When he saw my mother, Ha-Jun turned white and fell at her feet. He was certain that she had died during the winter months, and thought that the pale, corpse-like figure in front of him was her ghost, coming back to haunt him. I can't help but wonder what Amma would have been like if she had followed her brothers and sisters instead of staying behind. Would she still be this person waiting around for my father, who doesn't even want her? At times I find her so strange and incomprehensible, my mother. When she first told me about her early life, about those months she had chosen to stay behind, I wanted to shout at her, to shake her. To me she seemed so foolish and naive that I could hardly stand it. "Why?" I asked. My voice shook, betraying my thoughts. "Didn't you worry that Halmoni and Harabuji would never return?" "Never. I never doubted them for a second." "But how were you so sure?" "They were my parents," she said softly. "I knew they were going to come back." I opened my mouth, unable to stifle the frustration growing inside me. It came up like bile, the need to say something mean and biting, the desire to cut her down for her stupidity, the want to make her feel small. But soon that feeling gave way to sadness. I felt sorry for her, sorry that every part of her life had been characterized by misery, sorry that even now she was suffering. Her eyes were unfocused. She was lost in her thoughts and had no idea how awful she was making me feel. But I knew where she was and what she was remembering. She was back in that little tin house, the hail clattering noisily against the walls. It was winter, and she was alone, her cries lost to the wind. There are some things that you can never truly escape. Not really. Maybe that's why, even now, she's stuck in the past, long after everyone else has moved on. 5. I read an interesting article the other night, Oma says, peering at us over her cat eye reading glasses. She's sitting on the couch, her legs crossed, her feet facing the door. Maybe Ji-yoon hadn't noticed the small detail, but I have. At least my mother hasn't pretended to clean the closet or the shoe rack in a while, which I consider to be a massive improvement. School started a few weeks ago, but already I'm drowning in assignments. I look up from my place at the kitchen table where my books are spread. There are eraser shavings everywhere. I brush them off my sweater, watching as they float to the floor. Next to me, Ji-yoon sits with one arm hugging her knees. With the other hand, she's scrolling mindlessly through her phone. She doesn't make any indication that she has heard anything Amma is saying. Oma clears her throat and says in a slightly louder voice, "The article was very insightful. Lately our mother has been trying to goad us into asinine conversations. She brings up crazy things like conspiracy theories that she has read about on the internet or news that no sane person could possibly believe is real. The other night, she insisted that the moon landing had been faked. When Ji-yoon and I started arguing with her, she seemed almost happy, even when it resulted in an almost hour-long quarrel that left Ji-yoon in tears. Whether it's because Irma's lonely or bored, I'm not sure. But now Ji-yoon and I are careful not to engage her. Why are you girls ignoring your poor mother? I'm not, Ji-yoon says flatly without looking up. It seems like it. Okay. Distracted, I leaf through the pages of my book. This quarter I'm taking Philosophy 4, Philosophical Analysis of Contemporary Moral Issues. It's not an easy class and the material is confusing and dense. Ji-yoon keeps telling me that I'm being too hard on myself whenever I start complaining. Fine, Oma snaps. If neither of you care about me, I'll go crawl in a hole and die. You'll both wish you were nicer to me when I'm gone. There's an edge to her voice, a note of desperation. Amma is speaking faster now, the Korean slipping off her tongue like water. She doesn't pause between each word like she normally does to give us time to understand. Ji-yoon's eyes narrow. My sister knows as well as I do that if we keep ignoring our mother, she'll burst into tears or lash out in anger. With a sigh, I put my pencil down and rub at the graphite smudged along my wrist. What? I'm listening. Amma brightens up instantly, her melancholic demeanor gone, and leans forward, putting her hands together. The couch creaks from under her, protesting her every move. The article was about a woman who went on 100 dates with 100 different men, she says. It was an experiment to see which men were the worst to date and which were the best. This piques Ji-yoon's curiosity. She puts her phone down and looks up expectantly, waiting for Amma to continue talking. I stifle a giggle. My sister is boy crazy now, which is understandable given her age. Ji-yoon tries to conceal her feelings, growing silent whenever I ask her about boys she likes at her school. She doesn't know that I've found her diary in the closet, where she has written extensively about Andrew. So? Ji-yoon asks. So what? Amma says, grinning. Stop teasing, Ji-yoon complains. Tell us, who was the best and who was the worst? Amma takes a deep breath. She said that white men were the best and Korean men were the worst. What? Why? I ask. I can tell Amma is luring us into another one of her ludicrous conversations, but I can't help myself. I'm curious too. Isn't it obvious? Korean men are rude, stubborn, fickle, and hot-tempered. Our mother sniffs loudly and glances at the door. They don't know how to be accommodating. They think that they know better than everyone else. The writer said that the Korean man she dated tricked her into paying for dinner before dumping her over the phone. I don't think that means anything, I say, choosing my words carefully. I don't want to upset her or start an argument. Just because that guy was terrible doesn't mean all Korean men are terrible. Yes, it does, Amma huffs. Ask anybody. Think about the women I work with at the grocery store. None of them have decent husbands. They are good-for-nothing scoundrels. And do you know what they have in common? All of them are Korean. But how many dates did she actually go on? I ask, interrupting her mid-rant. If she only dated one Korean man and is saying that all of them are terrible based on that experience, don't you think it's a bit strange? Why is she assuming something about an entire group of people? It's like when people tell me that I should be good at math or that I'm a bad driver just because I'm Asian. You are a bad driver, Ji-yoon says. I glare at her. Amma scowls and folds her arms across her chest. Can't you just agree with me for once? I shake my head, and Ji-yoon is wise enough to change the subject. I'm more curious about why white men are the best, she says. You don't believe any of this crap, do you? I ask. Let her talk. I want to hear this. Unni? Amma beams at her. My sweet baby, she croons before continuing. The writer said that the white men were the most polite and thoughtful. They were good listeners and talked about their feelings openly, without any hostility. They asked her where she wanted to go and didn't argue with her about silly things. Some of them even gave her flowers on the first date. That's corny, Ji-yoon says. You say that now, but wait till you're older. Amma pushes her glasses up on her nose. Her face is shiny, and there's a line of sweat beading across her forehead. You'll want the flowers then. Trust me. Anyways, have any of you heard of a white man treating his girlfriend or wife badly? Because I haven't. That's ridiculous. You don't even know any white men, I say. Not true. I know many. There's a few who come to the grocery store to shop sometimes, and they are very nice and handsome. Tall. She raises her hand to demonstrate. You're just projecting, Ji-yoon says. Amma doesn't know what projecting means, but she knows it's something bad. Her lips flatten into a thin line and her chin begins to wobble. Her eyes fill with tears and suddenly she begins wailing. Ji-yoon and I jump up, startled, and look at each other. Why won't you listen? Is it so terrible for me to want the best for you too? Amma exclaims. You're all I have in this world. I have nobody else. The only thing I want is for you girls to be taken care of, for you to meet someone who will be good to you. I don't want this to happen to you. She throws her hands over her face, her body crumpling forward. I'm an old, ugly woman with nobody to love me. I'll be alone until I die. I shouldn't have married your father. I should have waited, should have found a nice, white man. Then I wouldn't be in this situation. Time is frozen. Heat rises into my chest. The sight of my mother in distress, her wide mouth open, the tears spilling down her shirt, is more than I can bear. I want to escape from our apartment, to disappear. Why won't she stop crying? I close my eyes, and Ji-yoon's voice cuts through the noise. You're not old, she says. Hearing her, Amma stops wailing. I'm not? No, you're only 53. That's still young. Besides, how can you say that you're ugly? All my friends think you're beautiful. And if you'd married someone other than Appa, then Unni and I wouldn't have been born. The tightness in my chest loosens. My sister has a gift for sidestepping conflict, for easing tension, for turning things around. I, on the other hand, am clumsy, awkward. Stressful situations make me panic. Amma says that Ji-yoon has good nunchi, that because of her keen sense of tact, she's more Korean than I am. Is that what you want? Ji-yoon continues. 2 other daughters who aren't us? I hold my breath, waiting for Amma's reaction. To my relief, she breaks into a fit of giggles. You're right, she says, reaching over to cup Ji-yoon's chin. So wise, my youngest daughter. Ji-yoon and I pile on top of her, and for a moment, we are a happy bundle, our problems forgotten. Then, Amma grows serious again, her brow furrowing. Still, I'm not kidding. I know marriage is a long way away, but it's never too early to prepare yourself. No Korean men. If there's even a chance that you might end up like me, why take it? Without hesitating, I entwine my pinky with hers to promise that I'll follow her advice. What does it matter to me anyway? Right now, all I care about is keeping the peace. I want to move on from this conversation, to go back to the table and return to the safety of my textbooks. Ji-yoon, on the other hand, shakes her head. I'm not promising anything, she says. We're lucky, For once, Oma drops the subject.